Hey folks, Dennis here with Las Vegas Worm Farm and the Living Soul community. It's time for our worm topic of the week. What are we talking about this week? Well, we're going to be talking about, you waiting for it? Me too. We're going to be talking about top dressing. And we're going to be talking about how all of that works together with, the biology and protecting it and improving soil and how it gets better over time, right? We know that a living soil gets better as time goes on, and as we continue utilizing that system, it gets better and better. But how do we utilize top dressing to kind of help that system along? And why would we top dress? Sometimes top dressing isn't always the right answer. um, Sometimes it is. So it really depends on your specific situation and whether it's right for you. But let's kind of talk about what top dressing is and why it's so important, right? When we're talking about top dressing, we're really adding organic material to the top of the soil, right? We're dressing the top of the soil. We're not amending the soil by adding it into the soil. We're not tilling. We're not mixing things together. We're just literally laying it on top, right? And by doing that, we are mimicking what Mother Nature does naturally, right? Mother Nature is not necessarily tilling up the soil. Well, time out. She kind of is, right? Worms, they take organic material from the top down. Ants do the same thing from the top down. Earwigs, crickets, they bring that stuff into the soil. Moles do too, right? So some of those animals do, but in this context, we're not tilling up the soil to be able to add the organic material in there. Some of these critters do it on a small scale, but we're not talking about big scale, like where we're bringing in a heavy piece of machinery, a tiller, right? To be able to break up the soil. So Mother Nature is not doing that. She's not making big disturbances all over the place to till in organic material. And the reason this is important, why we top dress, is because we're mimicking what Mother Nature does, right? She layers it on top. But here's the cool thing. When the microbes get to it and they start breaking it down, those are nutrients at the top, and they start going down. Those nutrients break apart, all that organic material breaks apart, turns into nutrients. And then as it rains, those liquids take those nutrients down into the root zone. Now think about this. If we're tilling it into the soil, right? And now we're adding microbes, and those microbes break it down, and the water pushes those nutrients down. Where the nutrients going? Are they bypassing the plant completely because it's past the roots? Maybe. It could possibly be. This is why we top dress. We top dress because that's where the nutrients break down. They sit there until they hit water. They become solubilized, meaning, they're liquid form, and then it goes down into the roots, and then those roots can actually absorb it. If we put it right into where the roots are, there's going to be some absorption there, right? Because microbes are there and organic material is breaking down. But when it rains and it wants to get that push, right, all those nutrients are going to be pushed down. Everybody's seen it rain and how much the plants grow after it rains, right? And that's usually, well, one of the causes for that is because the nutrients are at the top, and when it rains, those nutrients get pushed down into the root zone, and all of a sudden you have this flush of growth. So that's kind of what top dressing is and kind of why it's so essential, right? And when I say top dress, in this case, I'm talking about compost, but we can also talk about mulch, right? Which we'll talk about later, but that is also a top dressing that we would definitely want to make sure that we're incorporating into our growing styles, whatever type of growing style you're doing. If you're not using mulch, please start just a little bit, just something's better than nothing. So this compost, we kind of already talked about how it breaks down and how the microbes create those nutrients, but how does it actually improve the soil structure and all this other thing? Well, the first thing that it does, it helps hold moisture. When you add a layer of organic material on top, everything underneath that usually stays pretty moist, which is great. The next thing it does is actually hold or allow air to flow into that system, right? Because when we top dress, we have different size pieces, whether that's mulch or compost or whatever we're top dressing with. It's different sizes, and they kind of end up tangled together, right? Like, I don't even know how to do it with my fingers, but like this, right? but there's space everywhere. There's holes and gaps, and that allows airflow and water to kind of infiltrate, right, and go through that system. And that's what we want. We want a lot of airflow. We want a lot of moisture holding capacity because that's going to get those microbes active. And those microbes are super important because that's what creates nutrients for our plants and increases, which is the next thing that it does, is it increases the microbial activity. When we have airflow and we have a food source and we have water, we end up having a lot of microorganisms there. And those microorganisms are crucial to our plant's survivability, to the amount of nutrients that a plant has access to, that it can uptake and use, right? If we don't have that environment there, then your plant doesn't have access to all of that. And you probably end up with a plant that's, well, not doing so well. So we got to have everything in place to be able to allow that organic material to build that structure, right? And create all those nutrients and create a habitat for those microorganisms to survive so that they can do what they're supposed to do and create all those nutrients for our plants. It also allows, well, let's jump into when we do add this organic material on the top and we do top dress. There's one thing that I know a lot of you guys have already heard me talk about, and we just talked about it, and we're going to address this again. You can add the organic material, but please, please, please add mulch on top of that organic material. Add some type of cover, right? It's just like living in your house without a roof. Like nobody wants to live in a house without a roof. And the microbes don't want to live in the soil without a roof, and that roof is going to be mulch, and it provides a protective layer for everything in there. It also acts as a moisture barrier, right? So it keeps some of that moisture in, but it also makes sure that it regulates the temperature inside of that soil as well, right? So I always like to layer things, right? Worm castings, compost, and mulch on top. And that mulch will actually create a really nice environment for those microbes that we're talking about inside of that organic material, that compost. So they will just flourish and they will break all that stuff down. If any of you guys have ever noticed that when you fill up a garden bed, after a little while, it starts settling and sinking. That settling and sinking is the microorganisms and other critters eating the organic material, turning it into a soluble nutrient or gas, or letting it gas off. And then those nutrients go away, which makes the bed settle. It also just settles because things break down, but like as in crushes. But a lot of that is the organic material being broken down by all of the microbes and all of the critters inside of your soil. So it's super important to have that mulch on top so those microbes and those critters can actually do everything they need to inside of that soil system. It's one of the things that a lot of people don't do. They do all the other things. They get the expensive amendments, right? The fish hydrolysate, the kelp meal, the azomite, or the whatever rock dust you want, right? Like the basalts, and they're adding all this into the soil, and they're like, yes, this is a great system. And then you throw it outside and you just expose it to the elements, and then all the microbes end up dying and not surviving because the wind dries everything out, the sun bakes everything, right? And then the rain comes down and just pounds on the soil and compacts it. It's one of those things that everybody always forgets. It's the last thing, and it's one of those things that's very simple, but it's crucial. If you want to have a living soil and if you want to grow the healthiest plants possible, you have to put mulch. You have to. And since we're here, if you like this type of stuff, do me a favor, give it a like or a share. That way it reaches other folks that might like this content as well. And yeah, I really appreciate it if you did that. Only about 10% of the folks that actually watch the video click the like button, so I'd appreciate that greatly. But that's it. Let's get back to it. All right. How does mulch and compost work together? Kind of already covered this. Mulch is the roof. The compost is a food source for the microbes. I think one of the big misconceptions is that people think that compost is a food source for your plants. It's not. If you look at the letters or the letters and the numbers on your bag of compost, right? The NPK, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right? When you look at those numbers, if you look at compost, they're quite low. Usually they hang out in the 4, 5, 6 range, right? Which is not much. If you look at worm castings are usually 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, which is even less nutrients. Whereas if you look at a bag of synthetic fertilizer, there's like 40, 40, 40, 30, 30, 30, 20, 20, 20, which is 5 times the amount that's in a regular bag of compost, which people always ask me, or which, ask, which begs to, I don't know what the saying is, but people wonder, why am I buying compost? What's the purpose of it? The compost is a food source for the microorganisms, right? The carbon to nitrogen ratio of a good compost is usually between right around 30 to 1, right? And 30 to 1 means that there's uh, 30 carbons for every 1 nitrogen, which is a good ratio, which is enough food to feed the microorganisms in your soil. You probably already have bacteria there. It's the most abundant thing on the planet. So we don't really need to feed those guys, right? But there's a little bit there for them. And then we're really feeding the fungi with the carbon sources, right? That's what compost actually is. It's food for the microbes. Now, the next question I probably get is, hey, Dennis, are you growing plants or are you growing microbes? And it took me a long time to kind of think about this. And in all actuality, I'm probably more of a microbe farmer when I'm growing plants. Now, I'm a worm farmer, of course, you guys know that, right? That's what I do. But when I'm growing plants, I'm really a microbe farmer. I'm farming microbes, making sure that they have everything they need, right? Air, water, and food, compost, and then making sure that they can multiply and have their best conditions ever, because those guys are actually going to produce the nutrients for my plants. So how does that work? How does that compost work with the mulch? Food, roof. We all have refrigerators. We all have refrigerators. We all have pantries. But if you don't have a roof over your house, that refrigerator is only going to last so long, and all that food in that pantry is going to go bad as soon as it hits sunlight or it gets wet. Same thing goes for the compost in your soil. We want to make sure we keep everything covered, and mulch is going to be that covered. Now, how do you apply this stuff, right? And I know you're asking, Dennis, but what kind of mulch? We'll get there, I promise. How do you apply this stuff? I am a lazy gardener. If you guys haven't noticed or don't know, I talk a lot about being extremely lazy gardener, and I do this. And the way I apply these materials is I put compost, and then I put mulch, wood chips. I like to use wood chips. I don't use straw. I don't use. I do use plants sometimes, right? I do have strawberries that grow all over the place, and I do let my sweet potato vines grow all over the place to keep the soil covered. So I do use, cover crops or living mulch. But I like to use wood chips, and all I do is I add compost 3 times a year, right? Valentine's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and then we cover it with wood chips, and then we come back and we just repeat those. We repeat those steps. Now, I know you're going to be saying, Dennis, but wood chips leach nutrients from the soil for like 7 years or something like that, right? Yep, they absolutely do. The duration, I'm not sure, but they absolutely do pull nutrients from the soil. This is why I don't use fresh wood chips. I use composted wood chips. These wood chips don't rob nutrients. They're already full of everything that they need. So it's fine if you add them into the soil. No biggie. The difference here is fresh versus aged, decomposed, already going through some type of decomposition process. When they've already done that, they're no longer going to leach nutrients from your soil. And I know you're going to ask, what about wood chips? How long do they have to sit? It depends on the wood chips. It depends how big they are, how thick they are, your climate. Is it humid? Is it dry, right? How much sun do you get? How much rain do you get? I mean, just there's so many things that come to a factor that go into factoring how long is a fresh wood chip going to be stealing nutrients from your soil. I would say that if it's not sat outside in the elements for at least a year, you probably don't want to mix it into your soil. So I stick with composted wood chips. These wood chips, again, 3 times a year. I add compost, I put the wood chips on top. I do not move the wood chips out of the way to add more compost, because these wood chips have already been decomposed. They've already They're already not going, they're not going to steal nutrients from around the soil, right? They're not. So I can just add compost on top, right? You can just add it on top. It's very nice. Fresh wood chips, unfortunately, they want to be just like everybody. It's kind of like, the cool kids in school, right? Like everybody wants to fit in. I want to be cool. I'm gonna wear these shoes, and I'm gonna, dress like this. I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna act like this, and I'm gonna put my makeup on like this. If you wear makeup, I didn't. Just if you're asking, I did not wear. I didn't wear makeup. I did slick my hair back though, and I used a lot of gel. But everybody wants to fit in, right? And the same thing goes for the soil. Everybody wants to be in the soil. They want to fit in with everybody else. And when you use fresh wood chips, they don't fit in. They're not like everybody else. They're not decomposed. They haven't been around for a while, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to take a little bit from here. They're going to take a little bit from here. Oh, I like those shoes over there. I'm going to wear those. Oh, I like that shirt. I'm going to get that shirt. Oh, I like that hairdo. I'm going to do that hairdo like this. And that's basically the wood chip stealing nutrients, right? Stealing things from other groups so that it can fit in. And it takes a long time for the wood chips to break down to be able to get to a point where they're no longer robbing nutrients from your soil. So that's why I like to go the other route with something that's already been decomposed, and then I don't have to worry about that. I did tell you guys that I would talk about the different types: wood chips, straw, any living plant, which is called a cover crop. If some people like to use like mylar, the plastic that you can lay on top, it's reflective. That's also a mulch. Just understand, well, that's also a mulch. Landscape fabric, landscape plastic, all of those are also a mulch. They keep the soil covered. Every mulch has its pros and cons. Okay. Wood usually comes with other critters. Straw sometimes comes with seeds, right? Plastic can heat up. That's not good. Living plants, they might not cover all of your soil, and it takes a long time for some of those plants to grow. So picking whatever mulch you want, it's up to you. Just keep the soil covered one way or the other. I already kind of talked about when I apply these. When you do apply mulch, the one thing you want to remember is you want to keep things away from the stem of the plant, okay? Whether that's a transplant, whether that's a tree, you really don't want the mulch right up on it, right? So make sure you back that mulch up just a little bit. Give us some breathing room. Give us some room. Nobody likes to be crowded, right? So give it a little bit of room, and it'll be okay. Distance-wise, just not on the stem, right? Like it just depends. I don't have a ratio for how close the mulch should be to your stem, but just give it a little bit of space. Like make a donut around the plant, right? And then just mound up the mulch. So another good thing is that when you water, the water goes into that little thing and then it percolates through into the root system. So I like the little donut setup, but don't put your mulch all up on the stem of the plant. All up on, yeah, right next to the stem of the plant. And then if you're going to be using living plants, just know timing is going to be everything, right? Make sure that you get the plant into the ground at the right time so it keeps the soil covered for whatever period of time that you're trying to do it, right? Mine's usually like summertime. I already have wood chips on, but I like to add the sweet potatoes up on top, right? Just to provide another little barrier, from the soil, because here in Vegas, it's brutal. So I like to have that layer, just a little bit of layer, but you can use any type of plants, right? So just kind of up to you and what works in your environment, right? Sweet potatoes might not work in your environment, but maybe strawberries do, right? So that'll be a good ground cover for you. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Now, how do you avoid some of the mistakes? So we already talked about getting it too close to the plant. Keep it away. No crowding. Make a little bit of space. Also, we already talked about fresh wood chips. Don't want to do that. Some of the other mistakes is putting on too thick. If you are using some type of like wood chips or straw, you can put it on too thick. That's not good either, right? So I usually like to stick around 2 to 3 inches, depending, right? Some stuff is more porous than others, but 2 inches is probably a good start. And then if you can, get to 3, that'll be okay. That's just my personal preference with the wood chips that I use. Putting it too close to the stem, Oh, and then using products that are unfinished, right? So I don't think I would ever use a fresh green on top of my garden beds or any of my beds. So what I'm talking about here is using like grass clippings and then just putting those as a mulch on top. I wouldn't do that. You definitely want it to be decomposed and kind of dead if it's going to be a mulch before you put it on top of your bed. The reason for it is some of that stuff has is high in nitrogen, especially if it's really green, and that can start to tend to heat up depending on your climate again. And if that happens, you're going to start cooking plants that are in or around that area. And sometimes you can cook the roots of the plants too. So I wouldn't necessarily put leafy greens or any fresh material around your thing. Make sure that it's decomposed. Now, if it's a living plant, it's going to be fresh, right? There's nothing you can do about that, but that's different. But I wouldn't put any like fresh cut stuff down. Now, if you're doing chop and drop, that's different, right? Um, we usually aren't putting a lot of that stuff all over the place. It's usually spread across pretty thin and evenly all over the place. But that's just my personal preference. If you have different experience, by all means, let me know. But I wouldn't put fresh green grass clippings or fresh green hay or anything like that on top of my garden beds, um, just because I don't want that stuff to heat up. And then the last thing, which is the biggest mistake that most people do, is once you add compost, cover it. I just covered this earlier. Keep it covered. Put some type of mulch down so that that food stays covered. So your pantry and your refrigerator are covered underneath the house, so the underneath the roof of your house, right? So you can have access to all of that food, so the microbes can continually break down that organic material, multiply, and then provide more nutrients for your plants. It's key. It's vital. Got to have mulch on top. Just got to have it. You got to have it. There's no way around it. If you're thinking, maybe not, no, do it, right? If I had to pick the difference between buying amendments and adding it to the soil or putting mulch, I will pick mulch every single time. Mulch it's just the thing that keeps everything happy and going underneath the soil. If I don't have money for, basalt, rock dust, azomite, fish emulsion, what else is out there? Whatever else kind of amendments that you're adding into the soil, worm castings, mycorrhizal fungi, bacteria, if I don't have money for all those amendments, or if I don't have enough money to cover my mulch and buy all those amendments, I'm only buying the mulch. That's how important mulch is. It's that important. I would just get the mulch and I would just cover the soil. That mulch will eventually break down and feed the soil, and then you'll have all of the food sources that you need in that soil for those microbes. Get the mulch. Just get the mulch. Now, how does this differ? How do you mulch different in different gardening systems? I don't. I don't mulch differently. Every system is the exact same. It doesn't matter if I'm in a raised bed and I'm gardening, I'm adding compost, and then I'm adding wood chips on top of that. If I'm growing in pots, I'm adding compost, I'm adding wood chips on top. If I'm in the ground, I'm adding compost and I'm adding wood chips on top. There is no difference. The principles stay the exact same because biology and the way Mother Nature works is the exact same in all of those areas. It doesn't matter whether it's in the ground, in a pot, in a container. The way she works is the same way. The way the microbes break down the organic material, the way they create soluble nutrients, the way protozoas eat bacteria and nematodes, feed on protozoans, or the way nematodes eat bacteria, or the way a rotifer eats bacteria, all of that stays the same. It doesn't matter whether it's in a pot, in a container, or in the ground. In a pot, in a raised bed, or in the ground. Pot and a container is the same thing. It doesn't matter. The biology and the way that works is the exact same. The soil food web and the living soil doesn't change. It's just bigger or smaller depending on what you're trying to grow in. So a healthy soil system works everywhere. It doesn't matter, right? What we just talked about, top dressing works everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in Antarctica and Alaska. I can't speak today. Antarctica, Alaska, Florida, Texas, Mexico, Panama, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Morocco, Israel, Italy, How many other countries can I name? Switzerland, Germany, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, um, Syria, Oman, India, Japan, Vietnam, Korea, Mongolia. Have I named enough countries? Soil biology works the same in all of those places. Hawaii, the same. New Zealand, the same. Malaysia, the same. Greenland, the same. It doesn't matter. The microbes might change, right? We might have different species, but the functions that they perform are the exact same. Your protozoas are still going to feed on your bacteria. Your nematodes are going to feed on either fungi or bacteria, or they're going to feed on other protozoas, or they're going to feed on roots. Yes, some nematodes feed on roots. All of these microorganisms, they do the same thing. They're just different species sometimes. Doesn't matter where they're at in the world. So it really doesn't matter whether you're in a pot, in the ground, or in a raised bed. The way they work is the exact same. Well, if you made it this far in the video, do me a favor, give it a like. But that's going to be it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next week.